You need, can it be two of us signing? It can, right?
Yes,
Or does it need to
yeah.
be Georgia and somebody?
Oh, it can be both of you, but probably Georgia, just one person can sign.
Well,
More checks.
all right,
I think that's Kirsten coming driving in.
we're waiting one more minute please, for our fourth board member to appear.
You get the gavel.
I have the gavel. Do I need the little recorder or which is this
We're
record
good.
sufficient?
Sufficient, yeah.
The miracles of modern.
I know, right? I'm assuming everybody can hear us.
No hard things.
I know, I think the soccer.
Maybe the bottom, she thinks someone else in. Great, can I see that? Okay. The bottom part. There you go. Okay.
We'll wait for one minute because she's just parking.
Yeah, it's very crowded.
It is.
Oh, thank
And
you.
great that you don't have one.
Okay, that's perfect.
Hand it out to-
Yep, that's great, thank you. Maybe 25 parking lot. Yeah.
The bottom one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I will call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Bolinas Community Public Utility District. Director Walker is on her way and Director Seaman is not here this evening. And the first item on the agenda is community expression, where we will entertain a brief discussion of any items of community interest, but we can take no further action. Is there any community expression tonight? Seeing none,
No.
we will move on to consider amending the order of the items in the agenda. Belle, do we need to move things around?
I don't think so, it's so, I think it'll be.
Maybe the only thing, maybe
I think-
does the parking committee,
Yeah,
would you like to
the parking
speak?
committee,
Since
yeah.
you're here, instead of waiting for your time,
Mhm.
would we consider doing
Of
that?
course. Yeah, absolutely. I would be happy to do
Is
that.
anybody joining you or is it?
No,
Okay.
Yeah.
well, Bruce actually said
Um,
he might come, but I'm the one basically giving the report. We could wait a few minutes.
The only thing is the two items before you are super quick and brief.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
think it'll be, if you want to wait for
Okay.
Bruce, then.
We
Okay.
will not hold you up too long because you have sat until late hours
I know.
many times, so we honor that.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to discussion items. Item number one is the manager's report, and let it be read into the record that Director Walker is here.
Kirsten Walker is here.
Yes.
Did you see me outside?
Yeah.
Yes, we saw you.
So Georgia is, so we're not, we do not have a manager's report this morning or this evening because Georgia is not here. And so we will report everything next. There's not much anyhow, but we'll report it next time.
All right, things have been as one would expect on the waterfront. and-
Yes, yeah, yep. And
Excellent.
it's starting with the recent wetter weather, the Hondo's spilling and
Really
everything seems to be going, but yeah,
sweet.
yeah,
All right.
back to it.
So moving on to, we're on item two here, notice of
Yeah.
toxic away day at Mesa
Yeah.
Park on November 9th, item
Yes,
two.
yeah, so there's
Couple
gonna,
people in the waiting room, by the way.
oh, okay, I'm doing it.
Thanks.
There are,
We can help with that too, if
Okay.
you want to reassign.
it should be, I just, quickly, I won't be talking and it'll be a lot easier. So just that there's the Toxic Away Day is happening, it's an annual thing that happens every year, and it'll be November 9th. Everybody needs to call. Basically, you can take your hazardous waste materials to Mesa Park and they take it for free. It's with Zero Waste Marin, the BPUD and the fire department. And you can bring a carload of toxic things that you can't put in the garbage. And you just call this phone number and they actually have on the flyer that's online, they have a website that you can also log into to sign up for.
Can I ask you, Bill?
Yeah.
Does that mean appliances too, or electronics, I should say?
It's
I think electronics, yeah.
like e-waste, batteries, light bulbs, motor, bleach, paint,
Okay.
solvents. I'm not sure how.
It's more like oils and.
It has a picture of a cell phone, like an iPhone on it, so.
Right.
These are- I
But
think-
not bigger appliances.
Not like a
It
refrigerator.
doesn't say big appliances.
But you can call and ask.
Thanks. It says disposal limit to 15 gallons of liquid. Excuse me, or 125 pounds of dry waste.
So a bunch of cell phones.
All right, moving
Okay.
on to item number 3, special reports or updates, none being on the agenda. Potential for committee updates, volunteer committee updates, resource recovery committee.
So I'm just giving a brief verbal update that they did a grind again yesterday, so we're getting ourselves kind of set up for the winter better. And then we have to kind of let it compost, and we have actually, George Krakauer did a great job of talking to some local farms to take some of our compost. They were happy to do it, so we're just trying to coordinate getting them to take compost, which is great, because that gets it off the site. So that's moving forward. We're talking about raising the rates. Joe is really particular about making sure we give a lot of advance notice when we do that, because he's the one who has to have the conversations with the people in the field. But that would probably happen in the beginning of next year. Just the drop off rates, because they're quite a bit, half of what they are at like the cheapest places over the hill. So, and it's definitely running at a deficit right now. So that's what's going on with resource recovery right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Resident permit parking plan committee, sorry, excuse me, for bungling your
We
name.
got you early on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in the nick of time.
Yeah, we kind of have it on. Well, thank you. I think, I'm Sherry Hirsch, you've been on this committee with Bruce for over 4 years. And I'm glad to be here and very glad to report the news, which is good news. That something, something has actually happened that we wanted to have happen. So yesterday at the Board of Supervisors meeting, they adopted the permit plan and the vehicle length ordinances. And this was at their first reading, which is, I guess, their first review. I hadn't been familiar with the word reading, but, and then a second reading is scheduled for October 29th. So, the ordinances are the most important thing for them to have, taken action on. They also, approved the MOU that between, BPUD and the county for administering the permits. What they set aside though, they set aside the resolutions that, detail the parking restrictions for Wharf Road and Brighton. Because, at the last moment, the day the agenda, we saw the agenda, which was on Friday.
Before.
Friday, we found that there were some errors in how they were describing how it would roll out on Wharf Road. And they had indicated a far greater area that ever would be possible in that small strip part of the street that was under the, a part of the whole plan. And so I contacted Supervisor Rodoni Friday afternoon, and he got back to me that evening. and said, well, you know, that's not, you're right, this is not good, so, I gotta check it out with DPW, and he's copied DPW on the, problem, and then DPW got back Sunday night, because they weren't sure they were gonna wanna run the whole, they were gonna maybe pull the whole item, actually. I said, well, it's just a couple of words here and there, you know, on this resolution, you know, but I don't, you know, it's not anything we know about. So as it turned out, the staff person, Chris Blanc, I think he's a deputy director at
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the new deputy
director at DPW. He got it done, and he said, well, we're gonna take that off the resolution, and they're gonna approve everything else. Because the resolution, as it turns out, this is a new way they're doing parking, restrictions, I guess. It was devised partly because it was devised as a result of their work on Bolinas. So we have set this new standard apparently for the county about how they can do parking restrictions. They are doing ordinances that lay out the basic wording, and then they adopt resolutions that are more flexible. So in this case, because they had set up a flexible system, it was not a problem for them to pull off the resolution. So the first reading of the ordinance and the MOU was approved, and the second reading is October 29th for that, and then they will have bring the resolutions up probably in November. They didn't give us a date. We need to talk with them about it. Because we spent a lot of time with the county on these plans, and we had I think you got an email, a report from me for September about the walk we all took through town with the deputy county executive, Daniel, and DPW staff and our fire chief. And we wrote out, you know, this is what we saw, and this is what we need to know, and this is the way it should look in terms of restrictions. You know, this can't happen here, but this was probably okay there. And something happened where it never got translated into actual resolution. Our good contact, who we had a lot of, discussion about everything. Mr. Del Monte's last day was on the Friday, the 11th, the day that I saw the agenda. So it was a little like, uh-oh, what do we do kind of situation. Supervisor. So, we didn't call him, they wrote him, but, so anyway, the good news is that it's going forward. We'll get it, fixed, and, that there's still a little more going on with it. And I personally, I had been out of the country, out of the US of A, for about a month, and just got back on last Tuesday, and so, not really fully here. So it's kind of like a shock, but, so to be going right into it, but, I just want to say that Supervisor Donnie and Chris Blunt, they were very responsive, very helpful, and they just got it done. And so on to the next step. So,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you,
thanks.
and Bruce again for your 4 years of dedication. It's been not an easy milestone, and thanks to Dennis Verdoni for picking up on a Friday night.
yeah, he is. There are things, we still need to work with the county on what they're gonna do and
Yeah.
implementation.
So that was my next question. I
Yeah.
want to say thanks, and then my question was, you mentioned that the holdup was some areas of Wharf Road, and I'm curious Is that a
It's-
concern? Well, being the downtown representative.
Oh, they're gonna fix it. What had happened is, for some reason, they showed the entire street, not the entire, the part. A small part of Wharf Road is affected by this, by the, ordinance. It's really from, the way they stated it, made it confusing. From the museum to the beach, or what they call the terminus of Wharf Road. So that was how they framed things. They also framed the permit program from the museum to the terminus. Well, that included too many properties. It was not ever gonna be that entire area. And then we talked about it like many
Ten
times.
dollars.
Yeah,
We visually said, this is good.
yeah.
You know, we really went through it, and it was like, you know, it would have been. Anybody looking at us said, well, where will these people park at night then? Because some of these people on the lagoon, as you know, have no off-street parking. So we had to say, no, they can't go this whole street. I said, oh, yeah, that's right, okay. So that was the problem, so.
Does it have to be spelled out with words, or can you refer to a map that's very specific map?
I gave them a map, and I sent a map
We've seen
over
it.
here.
Yeah.
Where I circled every property.
Yeah.
I mean, can that be part of the resolution that the board of supervisors sees and passes? Can it be a map?
They had a map, the
Okay,
map was wrong,
oh, the map was wrong, okay,
yeah. So they'll get a new map,
okay,
and it'll be more, yeah, and part of the other confounding thing is that we have the College of Marin opening up. I understand, January or November or something. And they're gonna be excluded, and we're trying to make the most parking available as possible. I mean, there's only a very few places where it's really a problem.
Mhm.
And so you're threading a real, you're threading the needle. So that was what the issue really, that we need to look very carefully at that. And then there were some other follow-ups that we sent in our September report that we wanted to see follow up. They had two conflicting ordinances down across the street from Bruce's, where the county has 5 or 6 parking, and they had it under the county parks rules, which is dawn to dusk, and they had it under Measure X rules, dawn to 11 to 5. Yeah, and so that went on for years. We showed it to them on the walk, and they
People
did.
scratched their heads and paid no attention.
Yeah. And then you ask for enforcement, and then
Yeah.
somebody would go out, and so, they actually fixed that on the map. They left, so that got fixed on the map, and Brighton, it is the county parks property, and they get to enforce it the way they want. Apparently, it doesn't, it's not on the map. So.
does the county communicate with you before the agenda is published, or in the days leading up to as a way for you to double check this stuff, or?
Okay.
It's like the
Yeah.
Friday before.
Yeah.
Well, I was gone, in this period of time, but I was reading emails, and the last email we got from the county was that it would be coming out on the 7th, and we'll make sure you get a copy. Well, we never got a copy,
Okay,
so,
might have to just
I
be more
think
proactive and set the calendar and actually reach out to them in the days leading up to double check to make sure, maybe that's what you have. to do.
yeah, no, I agree. I myself, was in some, traveling, and
Yeah.
it was really hard for me to do it, and, it was just something that, well, I honestly didn't think they were going to put it on the agenda, and I thought, oh, we haven't heard, they're not putting it on the agenda
Right.
for that day, because they just had pulled it for the 24th. But yes, that's exactly the way it should be go. You gotta add every single time. And then I have to say that when they sent it to the coastal commission, the only way we knew, including the supervisor, didn't know it either, that it went, was when we read it on the tennis courts bulletin board a few days before it was gonna, I mean,
Yeah.
Or they mailed
that's
it
for
to
public
you,
notice.
and it went to
Yeah.
Lima.
Right.
it was one public notice on the tennis courts, and we never knew that it was going to the coastal commission. So we had to like, it was gonna go in like a week or so, I mean,
Yeah,
it's been up for a month. I guess I
so
should
that,
look at the bulletin board.
for a long time, the county offices have been, changing hands, people moving in and out. We'd had many years of good, good relations with Tom, Lai. And then all of a sudden he retired, and so, it was just, I think they're shuffling and trying to cover as best they can.
I think what happened is, this time is that we did have our person, Daniel, from the county, DeMonte, and he did a lot of work on it, and he was communicating quite regularly. And then the last communication we got at the end, towards the end of September, said that he was leaving on the 11th due to family issues. And I think that might have swirled things around in a way that got us all. But yes, this is a lesson, once again, learned.
Well, thank you so much for all the work you've done. Any further questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering, just reading through this, it lists Marin County Sheriff's Office, Venus Community Public Utilities District, and a coastal permit program. I'm wondering if there is like an applicant or a representative that gets to notice this, otherwise is it just something that we're just supposed to look for? And usually when there's a permit or a program, there's an entity that gets notified. And I was assuming that BCPUD was the entity, but it sounds like that's not.
Well, they just approved the MOU, so for that agreement, so hopefully now going forward, we'll have sort of something in as a kind of process that happens.
We haven't been receiving notification as an agency.
I mean, in the same way that Sherry has been, we've been looped in all of the emails that have come. And I think it's like shifting people, as Bruce is saying, and suddenly it's like disappears, you don't hear back from him, and then they have Daniel, who's great. He was super, like reaching out and giving us info and being very communicative. And then he left, and then it kind of fell apart for a little bit, but I have to say that Dennis and Chris, once Sherry brought that up at the last minute, they jumped right on it, so.
Yeah.
But I think that it's kind of been, there hasn't been one person at the helm the whole entire time
Okay.
from the county.
Yes, and going forward, one of the things I'm gonna ask Supervisor Donnie is, okay, so who are we working with? Because the next, we don't wanna go through, we wanna know that it's gonna be right. There's implementation questions, I don't think the College of Marine has been, notified about any of this. They've never participated. So that's the next thing to do, is to get a point person. I don't know who it's gonna be, right now it's Chris from DPW.
Chris Blow.
Well, thanks again. Super
Yeah, thank
appreciated.
Thank you.
I'm gonna move on. I'm assuming that the things in
The bold
bold
is-
is what we're actually gonna do,
Yes.
so nothing from land stewardship
Yes, yes.
committee.
Yeah.
Recology detailed rate review committee, I have seven.
I think I have, she sent, and I think I put it in your thing, I don't know, Kevin, if you wanted to talk about it, or I can just read
Thank you
what.
very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
I can read what, Georgia wrote.
Sure, let's, so
Okay.
the audience can hear it as well.
Okay, so basically, Recology Sonoma Marin has requested a one-time extraordinary rate increase due to increased operational costs, inflationary pressures, and the need for enhanced service capabilities. So where we are in the process is, over the past several weeks, Kevin and Georgia continued the work of the ad hoc committee. They met in person and remotely a few times over several hours to discuss and analyze Recology's request and strategize BPUD's response and draft our response letter. On October 7th, Georgia sent BPUD's formal response to Recology Sonoma Marin, and the letter includes the following suggested schedule. November 15th, we will finalize the amended contract. November 20th, approval of the draft Prop 218 notice at BPUD's regular November board meeting. November 25th, publish the Prop 218 notice. These are sort of admin things. January 15th, hold hearing for rate increase and allow public protest. So that's Recology is wanting to raise the rates.
It should say
Sorry?
comment, shouldn't it?
Yeah. February 1st, implementation of the rate increase. On October 14th, Georgia corresponded with Nikki Burke about next steps, but we have not yet received their formal reply to our response letter. And then she says the ad hoc committee will be meeting within the next week to discuss and formulate our strategy going forward. But we are likely to request a formal reply from Recology Sonoma Marin to our response letter before the ad hoc committee schedules a meeting with them to continue negotiations. Kevin, do you have anything to add? As a committee member?
Yeah, well, Jack is on the committee, but he's been out of town, so he wasn't able to kind of do the last bits of finalizing our response, but hopefully he'll be with us for the, if there's a negotiation with them. No, I think the important thing is the calendar, Recology was hoping to have something in place by January 1st, but that wasn't possible with our schedule, so that's what we're offering them. So it's kind of a tight timeline, but it's the ball's in their court now, so we're waiting back.
Okay. Any questions from anyone?
All right. Moving on to Canyon Road Committee.
So Georgia just wanted me to relay, basically that the ad hoc committee is going to be meeting with, having an internal meeting on October 23rd to discuss the project and formulate a plan to enable the 6 homes on Canyon to connect to our sewer system. And the BPUD then will be meeting on November 8th with the county to discuss sort of the environmental impacts, and the regional board staff also is at that meeting as well. So we're gonna meet internally and talk about the project, and then meet with the county. And then after that, we can hopefully, I think we're thinking about convening a meeting with the Canyon Road residents at some point too.
When was that meeting with
makes
the
sense.
county and that November 8th?
November 8th.
November 8th.
And is there any timeline that people have in mind at this point, or are there too many variables to?
There's still too many variables, but I think we'll have more information, in the next, by the 8th, after the 8th.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
All right, moving on to item 16. Marin Sea Level Rise Governance Steering Committee vote in board representative to join Marin Sea Level Rise Governance Steering Committee.
And that's,
Yes, do I just sit here and talk?
Yeah,
Just
or you can get
whatever
up.
makes you comfortable, yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm very glad to meet you. My name is Ariel Espiritu Santo. I'm an assistant county executive with County of Marin. To the point made earlier, I'm also relatively new to the county. I joined about 1.5 years ago. This is my first time coming to your meeting, and so happy to meet all of you. And I'm going to be introducing our consultant, Emily, who is online. And we are leading a project that's looking at countywide, how can we work together across jurisdictions to have a collective response to sea level rise. And she's going to give more details about the project. But our ask of you all here today is that as part of kicking off our project, we are setting up a steering committee made up of elected officials to represent the county. And what's really important to us is that we make sure that we have the coast and West Marin represented on that. And given that there are no incorporated cities and towns in Western Marin, we're looking to organizations like yourself to find members to join our committee. And there will be much more detail about that, but just wanted to give you that framework as Emily's walking you through the project and know that that is our ask.
All right, should I take it? I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm not there in person, but I appreciate you having this as a hybrid option and being able to dial in. You all look very mini to me, but I trust you all are all not mini in person. But my name is Emily Schwimmer. I'm an associate principal with AECOM's Climate Advisory Services team. And as Ariel noted, we're the consultant team supporting county with this sea level rise adaptation organizational structure and decision-making process. I'm going to briefly walk through the project in a bit more detail, so just go a little bit further on what Ariel shared, and then outline a little bit more about the steering committee. And our hope is, and then of course we'll answer any questions. And our hope is that at the end of this, you'll be informed enough to figure out who is best suited for the steering committee role. Okay, can I flip screens? Let's do this. Okay, so not to repeat everything Ariel said, but bear with me as I just walk through these slides. So the question we're aiming to answer with this project is, how can Marin County best work with its communities, cities, towns, and state and federal partners to advance solutions to sea level rise? And the motivation behind this is threefold, and there's a lot of reasons beyond these three, but the core three reasons are an acknowledgement that much of Marin County will be impacted by sea level rise. It is very unique in that it is surrounded on, I guess you could say, three sides by water that will be rising. And there are a lot of assets at play or that will be impacted by sea level rise, including, of course, a lot of private parcels, a lot of miles of roadway, and then a lot of important utility assets. So, and then, of course, schools and natural resources and working lands. So there's just a lot at stake here for people, our livelihoods, and the economy, and just nature. The second core reason is an acknowledgement that sea level rise doesn't adhere to jurisdictional boundaries and will all be impacted. A lot of assets that will be impacted require multi-jurisdictional collaboration to protect them. And also our third reason is that it's not really just a bayside or a coast side problem. Going back to the first reason, if you use a major transportation corridor, or your kids go to a specific school, or your fire district's in a specific location, everyone's going to be impacted in some way. And so for that reason, there seems to be a need for everyone to come to the table. And of course, sea level rise adaptation, like all planning, is very resource intensive. It requires knowledge and data and skill sets, and then just general staffing capacity. There's a good project should have really solid community engagement. And then there's, of course, the resources, so funding. So there's just a lot going on. So as we're exploring this question of what could a multi-jurisdictional governance structure look like, we are starting to organize our thoughts around the topic, around the question of what could a governance structure do? And we're trying to take it apart into these different roles, which are shown here as a way to just ask ourselves what's important to folks and what's important to folks in different parts of the county. And those who wear different hats. So maybe what's important to a public works director is very different from what might be important to a town manager. But these roles generally, and of course there's a lot of nuance here, we've categorized them from sort of least intensive, if you will, to more intensive. And these roles include the ability to facilitate, so to organize and bring people together and just sort of collaborate on planning exercises. There's research, so conducting vulnerability assessments, feasibility studies, things of that nature. Actual planning, so it's one thing to do a vulnerability assessment, it's a different thing to do an adaptation plan, so to actually think about where should investments happen and what should those investments be. Formalized, that one's a little a little nebulous, but I think that's more about land use planning, building codes, actually setting policy that there might be actual teeth to. And then finally, there's finance and implement. So the ability to fund finance, so both the potential to raise revenue, but also the potential to pursue grants. And then with the idea being that capital projects are likely on the table here. And then the potentially the ability to implement actual projects or programs. So we're thinking of, again, these as discrete roles and responsibilities that can kind of be a menu of options as we work through the governance structure question with communities across Marin. As part of our process, we're doing a fairly, I don't want to say exhaustive, but a lot of case study research on other multi-jurisdictional entities. And we're looking both within Marin and then within the broader Bay Area and then up and down California and then across the United States. We're really tapping into every corner that we can find. But just by way of examples, we're looking at Marin County Wildfire Prevention Authority, which is obviously very homegrown and a recent, you could call it success, but at the very least, it's a recent example of collaboration. Across the Bay in San Mateo, they a few years ago launched, it's technically a special district, but it is a multi-jurisdictional entity that is its sole purpose is to plan for and adapt to sea level rise across the county. And then we're including Marin Climate and Energy Partnership in here, but we could also include Baywave. But the idea is to show there's a less formal governance structure, but more of sort of an MOU-based collaboration that could be the preferred model. We just don't know yet. Briefly, our overall approach to this work is to start by doing this case study research and a first round of stakeholder engagement to understand what are people's priorities, where is there common ground on the topic of sea level rise, and where are there differences. And then we'll take that information and go back to our desks and our case studies, and we'll move into phase 2, in which we'll come up with theoretically a menu of governance structure options. And then we'll take those back to the same groups we talked to before, maybe in slightly different permutations so we can mix ideas and see what sounds interesting to folks, what rises to the top. And then ultimately our goal is by the end of next summer to recommend a preferred governance structure to the Board of Supervisors and to the cities and towns and utility districts, just every corner of Marin. Overall, I've been speaking a long time. I'll try to move it along. So our stepping back, so our approach is fundamentally going to be guided by a steering committee. The steering committee is intended to be an oversight body that is made up of an elected officials, so people who have a responsibility to their constituents, and we want it to be geographically representative, as Ariel said. So we want to make sure that even the unincorporated areas have just as much representation on the steering committee as cities, et cetera. And then we're also going to form a technical advisory committee, so bringing in folks who have technical expertise on funding, financing, governance, sea level rise adaptation, et cetera, so that we have those folks to tap into as we work through some big questions. And then, of course, we'll be doing extensive stakeholder engagement. So we view these as really the 3 pillars or the tripod that will support this overall effort. Just briefly showing that we're early in this process. We've done the desktop research, but we're in this point where we're forming the committees, and then soon enough, after we form the steering committee, we'll turn to the stakeholder engagement. So about the steering committee and why we're here this evening, the purpose of the steering committee is to bring together elected officials who are representing areas that, well, again, all geographic corners of Marin County. And we want to use the steering committee as really a two-way street. We want to be able to build trust with communities and the folks that you all represent. And we want to get their take on as we say here, valuable community insights, and use that insight to guide our stakeholder engagement to make sure we're really being as effective as we can be in getting the input that we need. And then on the inverse, we want to use the steering committee, assuming we're doing a good job of hearing what they say and their inputs, that then they can go back to their constituents and internal partners to understand what's important to them, and then also convey back the work that we're doing so that we're slowly building a coalition around whatever the ultimate recommendation is. It shouldn't be a surprise what we recommend next summer. We do expect the steering committee members to, of course, participate. And, when they show up at the steering committee meeting, to both be wearing their hat of representing their communities, but also thinking about how, we're working collaboratively across the county. Again, we are hoping that this person would communicate findings back to their constituents or back to their boards, so that it's not staying just with one person, the information and discussions. And I think those are really the expectations. So it's not just meeting attendance, it's actual follow through to a certain degree. This is just a repeat, but overall the roles through the course of the project over the next 9 to 12 months will be at the start to help us refine the overall goals and principles of the project, and then to guide communication and stakeholder engagement plans. So we have a draft stakeholder engagement strategy, and one of the first asks will be, did we get this right? Where can we improve? Should we think about these groups differently? Just really help us understand your communities so that we do get that engagement piece right. And then we'll come back to you with our findings, and then we'll get your input on how to think about the alternatives, and then ultimately the final recommendation, so that again, next summer we have a recommendation that will be widely accepted by most people, or as many people as possible. And those are it. Again, these are just reiterating this. So members will be electeds from throughout the county. We want elected officials that have ties to Baywave or various regional communities and utility districts, Smart LAFCO. So just folks that are potentially able to wear more than one hat when they come to the meetings. That helps us be most efficient. But in the case of West Marin, it's a large geography, so that in and of itself is helpful. Overall expectations in a more logistics-based representation is that we will have regular meetings approximately every 3 months. The cadence is a little bit TBD, but that's the goal. And the first meeting is targeted for mid-November. We're currently in the process of scheduling it. We are hoping that people will want to be there in person, but of course we'll offer a virtual option. And then again, meetings after that will be approximately every 3 months. And then in between meetings, there will be expectations to again report out on what we discussed, and to have some internal conversations or with your constituents about specific topics. And that's mostly it. Our hope is to maximize steering committee members' time in the meetings, and to not ask too much, but only engage them in a way that engage the steering committee in a way that really respects their time and gets the most out of it. And I think that's it. Any questions on the project or the steering committee that Ariel and I can answer?
Yeah.
I see hands.
All
Hands.
Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I have 2 questions. One, did the county of Marin hire AECom to do this initial research, or did this evolve a different way? And does the official need to be elected? Because I'm wondering if our general manager would be the right person, but I don't think she's technically elected, is she? So I don't know how specific that nuance is. It needs to be a board member, or if it can be the general manager of the district.
I can answer the first question, which is. Yeah, AECOM has been retained to do this project, which is to lead this effort to come up with a governance model. However, this is coming out of, decades of work at the county and with other jurisdictions of working together. But they have been hired specifically for this effort. Emily, do you want to start
Yep.
with the second question?
Yeah, and just to clarify one more thing, yes, we've been leading the case study research, if your question is specifically about that. So we've both been doing desktop research on peer agencies, talking to, I don't know what you know about AECOM, but we're a very large company with offices in every city, no matter its size, it seems. So we've been talking to folks across the US on potential case studies, and we've been interviewing a subset of agencies to get more details on like lessons learned, what worked, what didn't. And then for the electeds question, it's a very good one. We struggled with that a lot. Ultimately, our preference is that the steering committee is electeds. And our hunch is that mixing electeds with staff level isn't always perfect. And so if we can keep it all electeds, then that would be better, we think, for the steering committee. On our technical advisory committee, we will be recruiting staff level folks. And we will be taking the same geographic representation approach while also mixing in the need to get very specific skill sets and expertise. So Georgia might be a good person for that. And those are the people that we also expect to ask a little bit more of, to really roll up their sleeves a bit with us in not the day to day, but let's say the month to month.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thank you again. And to build off of your point about the steering committee, I'm wondering how many people do you expect will be serving on that steering committee? Knowing you're looking for elected officials. Representations.
We currently have 13 seats, if I remember correctly. It's one from each town or city and town that has, that is incorporated. And then we have 2 seats for West Marin. So we're coming to you all to identify a seat. And then we are also going to the RCD to ask them to identify a seat. And then we'll hold 1 seat for Grayton.
And we have 2 seats for Board of Supervisor folks.
Yes.
So not every incorporated jurisdiction is represented. I believe it's the Bayside jurisdictions.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah. Supervisor Rice is representing one of the county seats and will be representing her jurisdiction on that.
And then, and Stephanie Moulton Peters is the other.
Okay. And do you have somebody like the Gulf of the Farallones? I mean, Bolinas is unique in that a good part of our waterfront is Bolinas Lagoon, which is overseen by the Gulf of the Farallones, and Marine Brown is a sanctuary. I'm wondering, we've got sea level rising, but we also have that lagoon filling in. And so that's an unusual economy. I'm wondering, is she part of your conversation as well?
So I think that can come up through the engagement strategy, because there's multiple different ways that we'll be engaging with various organizations. But for this specific elected steering committee, it is as Emily just described.
I have a question. Zooming out a bit, it seems to me that sea level rise is a component of climate change. I'm no expert, but that's my understanding. So, I'm glad to see the county sort of taking a, active approach to sea level rise, but is there also an approach to sort of climate change? Like, I'm curious what the county's strategy is, what's the state strategy? What's the federal strategy? The climate change in general, so why the focus on sea level rise only?
Do you want to try that one?
I had that. I mean,
I can start with yes, all of the above. I mean, the county we have our climate action plan. We're looking at the broader questions. this is like a now tactical need to respond to the sea level rise. I mean, just as you see with the wildfire prevention authority, that is another component of climate change. So they all fit together, but this effort right now, that is the piece that we're talking about here, but it is hard to separate from all the bigger. And then, I mean, Emily might be able to talk a bit more about the regional and federal, and then I would just add that this is also timely and that it's playing in with, if you're following, state SB 272, which is requiring regional areas to have collaborative plans around sea level rise, and then BCDC actually, tomorrow, their commission is gonna be meeting to talk about their regional shoreline adaptation plan. So many of us are working on this in different ways, and our goal is that whatever comes out of this process is something that feeds into those other efforts and builds upon those efforts. But yes, I think that I'll stop there and see if Emily wants to add anything.
All I'll say is yes, they do go hand in hand. They are two different types of assets, if to get overly reductive in it. Just dealing with or asking a question about mitigation and adaptation at the same time is really, really big. And my sense, one of the first questions that was asked of me, at least when we started this project, was why are we just doing sea level rise? Should we not also do other climate hazards, just by way of example of sort of opening the lens? And it does seem like figuring out how to get a county as geographically and interest and priority diverse as Marin to come together around one topic is going to be a journey in and of itself. So let's start with that one topic, and then if down the line it makes sense to open the lens a little bit further, that could be an opportunity maybe. But as Ariel said at the start, I do think there's separate mitigation efforts underway.
Okay, I have a few more questions. Is this a volunteer position? Like to join the steering committee, is that a volunteer position or?
Maybe, what do you mean by that question? Sorry.
I mean, are the people who join the steering committee, would they be volunteers, or is there a salary associated with it or stipend?
Oh, there would be no stipend for the elected officials or for, yes, but we are looking at having that when we have community members involved in our engagement.
Okay. And do you know where the meetings will be held? Will they all be in San Rafael or over the hill, or where would the meetings be? Do you know yet? Like the November meeting, do you have that on the books yet?
The first meeting will be hosted at County of Marin, and then the meetings following that are expected to be virtual.
Okay. Is that your question? Oh.
Just beating you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering,
There's my question.
have you heard of the Alliance of Coastal Villages? I believe that our general manager attends these meetings. Bill, you probably know more about the Alliance of Coastal Villages than I do, but it is sort of what it sounds like, an alliance of representatives from all the coastal villages up and down Marin County. So it seems like they would be a good I don't know, candidate to participate in these conversations. So just wondering if you've reached out to them. I don't know if they're elected officials or, like Georgia's our representative, so she's
Yeah, I
a,
don't know if they're all,
I think it might be a mix, but
so it might be a mix. I know that they, you guys maybe have heard of them or worked with them. Jennifer was in the office today. Our prior general manager was on, worked extensively with the Alliance, and she just mentioned that they would be really happy to hear about this because they have seen something that was kind of focusing on the eastern areas, and so that they were going to be really pleased to hear that there was something for West Marin. So you guys may have already talked to some of them.
Yeah, and that would then also be part of our engagement strategy of who we're talking to get feedback from.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Uh,
sound great to engage with. Thank you for flagging.
Yeah,
We can send some info out to you guys, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'm unclear of what the goal is for tonight. Are you looking for one of us to raise our hand to join this? Or is this more informational? I'm confused about what's going on tonight.
That is our goal, if one of you is willing to raise your hand. Our understanding is that you need to join via a process that occurs at your meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Right.
I'd have to
The
figure
board
out,
would have to designate somebody to be a
Right.
representative.
It says the
Right.
vote in board representative to join the Marine Sea Level Rise.
yeah, so we would have to have a vote, like have it on the agenda and have a vote at the board level to choose somebody.
Which is not tonight, I guess that. was
Yeah,
my-
beyond tonight.
That was my,
Right.
that was my question. is
It needs to
when-
be
When is
agendized.
this commitment?
Yeah.
happen?
But I mean,
So
if
it's
your
not
meeting's
tonight.
in November, when, that could be,
Well, right there.
yeah.
It does say, is this under action?
Well,
It's
actually,
agendized that if you are ready to vote. you
Yeah,
vote.
that's true.
that,
Yes.
Yeah.
we did information and action. And can you remind me again who else in West Marin you've reached out to? There are not a lot of elected.
They're not,
There's Inverness Water District, right? And
We're-
Stinson Beach Water District and anybody else? Tamales
Smallest Bay, maybe?
Water
Yeah.
District. I mean, it's just the water districts. is
And
it
what,
not?
did you say RCD was?
What's
the other
RCD?
the Resource Conservation District.
Who's that?
So that is,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that to be such an abrupt question, but I have no way, I've never heard of.
they're another elected body that represents Western Marin, and we're on their next board meeting to see if they have a member that they'd like to join.
East Stinson Beach Village Association of those people elected.
No, but there's a board at the Stinson Water District.
Correct, so we, this was the board that we prioritized coming to, Bolinas does represent one of the largest populations in West Marin. And we wanted to have at least one utility district on, so. That's why you all were our first stop.
I'm flattered.
She's looking at me.
We're all looking at
Well,
It's
sorry.
like
we're
you
just-
have some competition.
RCD, we're just looking up the RCD
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because we haven't heard of them before.
We also, have gotten input from Supervisor Rodoni and his staff on who he saw as being good organizations to represent, to get the full picture for West Marin.
Okay, thank you.
They're elected.
Sorry, we're still just looking at the RCD here, just,
Yeah, I never heard of the RCD that wrote that.
Do you know where? you're
Yeah.
meeting?
what's that?
Where is RCD?
RCD, it
She
looks
said
like goes
she's meeting
from,
with them,
they go from Bodega, and they cover from Bodega all the way up to Novato.
Hmm.
And then down to the Golden Gate Bridge, so the whole coast, basically,
including us.
including us, yeah, we are part of the RCD. Apparently,
We're already
Voted
bringing
for
knowledge
RCD.
together.
I know.
what's that?
We're already bringing together
Yeah,
collective
yeah.
knowledge for the county.
And
Who votes for them? I've never voted for.
about the arts, well, anyway, to the board,
It's interesting.
yeah, so we'll look at it a little bit,
Well, I guess.
It sounds like the question is, is one of you
Just
willing
like
to be on the
question.
committee?
I mean, I'm interested in it.
Mhm.
We're gonna just cut to the chase. But I'm concerned about my ability to devote time to it. Does anyone else have any interest or?
I'm interested, but have the same reservation, like you said, this isn't just a show up to the meeting type situation, you wanna see some action and some. Work outside of the meetings, which I understand, do you have a sense of the time commitment for this position?
I mean,
Um,
I'm sorry. We'll see if we have the same sense. for
Yeah.
time. You go first. Ellie.
I wouldn't say it's gonna be like go out and host your own community meetings type thing. that's what our project team will do. It's more, if you all are meeting as a board, reporting back on what we discuss in our steering committee, or, if there is a question about who to work with in West Marin and we don't know, and maybe you don't know off the top of your head, that you would actually, follow up and look into it for us or make an introduction. Or there's a question of, like, what do you think this specific person thinks about this topic? That maybe you would do that. That sort of outreach for us. Sorry, this is Levi. He recently had a great weekend in Bolinas. Anyway, so it's that kind of representation, but by no means like a lot of work in between meetings.
Okay.
I guess the way I'm envisioning this is that information would be brought back here to this meeting, because this is a public place, but also to the community meetings, probably there would be some kind of a reporting out, that would be
Yeah.
either hooking them up with the community meeting folks,
Yeah,
because those are really the only two
Sorry,
places
when
that
you
I
say
can
the
think of.
community meeting.
Civic group.
The civic group is what I'm trying to say,
Oh, okay.
without actually being able to say it apparently.
those are the
That's it.
second Wednesdays, I believe, so they're always the week before,
Yeah.
or usually.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because I know that there are also a few people in our community that aren't elected officials, that this is on their radar and they.
They're working on it independently, yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Rudy and.
Right.
Those
Ralph.
fishermen guys, Ralph.
Yeah, and the fishermen.
So I could almost even see that there could be some kind of ad hoc or subcommittee here
Mhm.
within BPUD. That maybe there is one elected person going to
Yeah.
your meetings, but coming back and having our own smaller group of BPUD and also individual
Interested
community
parties.
members, yeah,
Mhm.
who have some invested interests. So.
Yeah.
Jen?
Steve Matson has that huge
Oh,
map.
God,
and,
yes.
And the group he works with, Megan and her associate, and there is a sea level rise committee that already, you must know that, I'm sure. So it would be a shame not to include them.
Yeah. But maybe not on the steering committee, more as subject matter experts
Yes.
for this particular area, I would think, is how they're envisioning it.
And if I could add, I think in terms of workload, like one of the first most important tasks would be reviewing that stakeholder engagement plan that we have, and that's where exactly a lot of these comments you brought up would come into play there.
Well, I'm happy to be part of the ad hoc committee.
You're right on the water, and you're a fisherman.
Yes, I have an invested interest in sea rights.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen. You wanted rock, paper, scissors, or how would you like to decide?
I mean, I'd be interested in doing it. But if you're more interested, I don't know how to,
Quantify, our interest. Yeah.
Maybe you can take two.
sounds like they cannot.
Oh, okay.
Go for
Okay.
it, take it.
Okay.
You have-
I nominate Andrew to join the, I'm not gonna butcher the name here, the Marin Sea Level Rise Governance Steering Committee. As a representative of BCPUD.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
And I didn't mean to jump the gun, but we can discuss it more if you want,
I
but.
think,
I accept.
We didn't
You're gonna
ask-
be on the
we-
committee too.
We did ask if you were interested, Grace, we didn't really.
no, I am not interested. I'm dealing with my 92-year-old mother. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great,
All right.
thank you. Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is my ad hoc committee.
Lucky you.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Lifelong.
Yes, thank you for
Yes,
coming.
Thank you. Looking forward to meeting you in person one day.
Likewise.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
Espiritu Santo.
That's a kind of magical last name.
What is your position in the county?
Assistant County Executive.
Assistant.
And I was very close to Daniel, and I'm also mourning his loss. But we'll make sure that good hands continue to take care of you all.
Yeah.
It's just communication, basically, you know.
Yeah. We'll have a
All
safe
right.
drive home.
Yeah, try to stay if it's dark out there.
It got real dark out.
Yeah.
And it's not the first deer.
Yeah, watch out for deer.
The
Yeah.
deer, they're out right now.
A lot of deer on the road.
They're really.
Yeah.
So when you see one, there's often another one.
Okay,
That
well,
you
I'll
don't
try
see.
nicely.
Slowly and majestically.
Nice full letting you down.
Yeah, that's it. For the
All
comment.
right, nice to meet you.
Bye.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Val. All right.
Okay.
We are going to, there's something in the chat, oh, that's from Emily, thank you, Emily. We are gonna move on, item 17, nothing to report, 18, item 19. Resolution 733 for providing water data.
Actually,
to-
The one said we
Skip one,
skipped
sorry.
18, which I think
It,
Kevin.
it wasn't in bold, so I.
Oh,
we're not.
these ones are not bolded. It's
Oh,
just
okay,
those.
excuse me, that's all right. Moving on to item 18, proposal to move December 18th meeting to December 11th.
This was my request.
Yeah.
Selfishly, this is a request as I will be out of town, so I would have to miss the December 18th meeting. So it is partially a selfish request. It's also a request on behalf of the community to move the meeting away from the holiday crush 1 week and bump it up a week. So that is my request.
Any discussion about this?
Is there any conflict with other, in-town?
That'll probably be the civic group meeting night, I'm guessing, because I think they do this second Wednesday. Let me just check that real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would assume this space is available. That's probably one thing we need to check, but we can have it.
We can have it at the library. We can have it at the library, at my library.
Okay.
If we want to.
It's fine with me. What do you guys
Any
think? Or,
discussion?
or keep it the way it is and I would miss the meeting and that's fine too, but.
Wait, sorry, so to what date?
So December 18th is our regularly scheduled December
Yeah.
meeting. I'm requesting to bump it up 1 week to December 11th. And so that I can make the meeting, because
That works for
I
me.
won't be here for the 18th, but, and also just to get it away from the holidays a little bit in case people are traveling, so that was a request. There is a conflict with the Billina Civic Group meeting.
Here.
No,
Oh,
not
that-
here. They're in the community center usually, so. But the
Well,
same,
We don't actually have a
Those
huge
meetings are-
attendance.
Yeah.
They're. They have question and answer.
I think we could go back to our normal
No.
time.
Sorry.
It's fine.
All right.
You'll have to see next
Oh, for discussion, yes.
Would you like to, Jenny?
Well, typically, my feeling is if you move something forward, it makes it really difficult for people then if they didn't get the information, then they miss the meeting. Of course, you can't put it a week later because that's Christmas, but, it is difficult because there are people I know, happen to know one sitting right here, who just like to go to meetings and keep up, and it does make it kind of hard, so it would be kind of good to stagger your time a little bit to accommodate.
You mean because of the civic group meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, as far as the calendar goes, we would obviously publish it in the hearsay and next door.
yeah, just have
you
to
know.
make sure people know that it's a week.
Sure,
Right.
yeah, which we've done,
But,
yeah,
yeah.
in the past, we do that for
It's-
special meetings and all that, so.
It is difficult.
What time's that meeting?
That meeting is later, so you could maybe just get your meeting early.
I'd be happy to do it at 5.
Is there a meeting at 6?
Yeah, meetings at, let's see,
7, I think,
7,
right?
yeah, I think it goes from 7 to 8:30, but.
Oh,
Well, maybe we could meet a little bit earlier.
I'd be happy to do that.
I have their meeting starting at 6, I think they did move them up earlier, Jenny, that's my
Okay.
recollection, I have them in my calendar as 6. But I could be wrong.
6 to 7:30, yeah, that's right.
Mm.
You're right, they did move it up, 6 to 7:30.
At the risk of really moving things around, how would it sound to people if we just this once did it at 5? I think that the way that our agenda is arranged these days, we sort of, the substantive issues are the ones that people may need to speak to, do get moved more to the front of the agenda, and I doubt that anybody's gonna particularly care about approving the warrants necessarily, and if they do, they can see them ahead.
Yeah, sure.
But, I do like the idea of moving a little further away from the holidays, and I think that your presence is always, you know, an asset, so.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like you preemptively brought it up, we should accommodate.
Yeah, I think that's fine. You see any problem
No,
from the office end?
probably
So
not.
do we? Yes, can we have a
So
motion?
5 o'clock, is that what you're proposing? 5
I'm
o'clock?
just throwing that out there.
That's
We can
a-
do it
is that- do you think that'll
accommodated.
work?
I think
If
it's
we would
better
front load
to do.
the-
It's gonna be dark then too, so
It's
it'll feel like.
very.
I make a motion that we move our December meeting to the 11th here, if it's available, at 5 p.m.
Okay.
And I suppose we could reach out to the civic group and say,
Maybe they
can you
could go-
start at 6:30?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's a little bit more.
There you go.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay,
Could I have a second?
I will second that, 5 p.m.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Danny.
Yeah. All right, moving on to item number 19, resolution 733 for providing water data to the directors of the board.
That's not ready.
All right.
It's a
We
little more
will table
complex.
that till next
Mhm.
time. Moving on to item number 22, resolution 734 for hiring committee makeup.
Mhm.
And that was.
That was in your,
packets.
yeah, and there's no change from when we discussed it at the prior meeting. It was just sort of formalizing it in a resolution.
Anybody have
Can
it?
I ask, yeah, I have one question. There's the second column which says open hire committee makeup, and then there's the far right column that says internal promotion procedure. Does the internal promotion procedure mean that it can it can originate as a general manager recommended item?
Yes,
Okay. I know that's it's kind
Yeah.
of been here a bunch of times, but I just want to triple check. that.
yes, so the general manager can make that recommendation to the personnel committee, then the personnel committee brings it to the board.
Cool.
Right, otherwise, the open hire is obviously, going out to hire. That's
And the personnel committee are happy with this process?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I have no idea because Jack and I have not met about this process. But I know Jack's been a part of this discussion all along. Is that not true? That's my understanding.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I mean, this was brought to the board, previously, this particular makeup. And so if you guys are still questioning it, we can circle back and make sure that Jack is, or not that you're questioning it, but if you wanted to make sure that Jack is the personnel.
I mean, can we
committee.
make it?
Or
can we make a
contingent
motion
upon-
to approve it, contingent on the personnel committee?
Mhm.
I'd like to do that to move
Yeah.
forward, because I would like to just run over with Jack since I just got back and
Yeah.
we haven't. We
Right.
didn't.
And we don't
Put heads
necessarily
together.
want this to have to come back up as another.
Precisely.
Okay,
Part of me thinks that this was Jack's recommendation, but you guys should.
I would think so too, but I just wanted to put heads together with him once he's in his time zone.
Okay, well, I make a motion to approve it contingent on the personnel committee discussing and approving.
Second,
A second. I did find a typo though that
Oh.
you should correct.
Okay.
In the last sort of paragraph on the first page, it is hereby certified. It says 16th day, but there's a space in there that you should get rid of.
oh, this 1/6.
Yeah,
Okay, got it.
106 days.
yeah, not 160
Is
of
it?
October.
16.
yeah.
But I'm just confirming this, when this came before the board previously, I don't remember if that was last month or the month before.
Right,
Must have been the
Did-
month before.
Did we actually make any changes to it, or is this how we saw it at the time?
that's how you saw it at the
Okay.
time, so it hasn't changed.
Okay,
And this is really more just formalizing it in a resolution.
and I'm confused about maybe one question, for example, for the assistant GM position, it says that the open hire committee makeup will be the GM plus 2 board members. but that doesn't necessarily require those two board members to be on the personnel committee, or is it implied that those are the personnel committee?
No, it's the, it doesn't require them to be on the
Okay.
personnel committee, yeah. Just, I think she's just trying to formalize the whole process of, hiring essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, if it was an internal one, it would be the typical personnel committee and then to the board, but if it's an outside person, then two board members.
Okay.
Any two board members, same with the chief operator, it's the same one.
Yeah. I just don't understand why not just make that the personnel committee instead of.
It's
two board
always
members?
been the personnel committee in the past. What was the thought behind that change?
I don't know, that would be, Georgia put that in there, so I think she was just sort of making it more, giving it more latitude to be,
Yeah.
if it didn't have to be the personnel committee per se.
Yeah,
Just that the board was sort of part of the process.
okay, yeah, that makes sense, yeah. Okay. So I think there was a motion in a second.
That's all, there was, we were even talking about like if there's an alternate personnel committee in that meeting. That's maybe why.
Well, there always is an alternate
Yeah.
personnel committee
Yeah.
person, so they would still be just,
So you want.
yeah, but they would also be part of the personnel committee. I mean, they'd be the alternate, so.
Okay.
I don't know, to me, it makes sense to have it be the personnel committee, but since I wasn't part of this discussions, I'm not feeling like I need to.
And I wasn't here in August either, so.
I think it makes sense the way it's written, like you say, for flexibility and,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's good.
Well, unless they, if the personnel committee have any concerns or comments.
Absolutely, yeah.
There you go.
Okay, let's revise it and.
That's true.
Yeah,
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And that is contingent.
yes, contingent upon the personnel committee.
All right. Approval of the minutes for the August 21st regular board meeting, item 23.
We do have those ones,
I had a comment.
yeah.
It's not clear to me who was attending that meeting.
I had the same comment, and I looked back on previous minutes, it usually says roll, just like it says on the agenda, but it doesn't say.
Oh, okay,
And it doesn't, I
yeah.
don't think we actually do that usually in the minutes, but
Yeah.
I think we should, I think it's
Yeah.
worth.
That was my
Okay.
comment too, but it does show that in every vote that Grace and
Yeah.
Kristen were absent, but.
Yeah,
I
so you
think
can
we should
discover
start
it,
it.
yeah.
I think that's a good suggestion, we'll add that. These were done by Annie, our new admin gal, and then I just sort of went over them and tweaked them a little bit here and there, and I haven't had a chance to, she did the September ones, but I haven't had a chance to go over them. I don't wanna send them out yet until I've looked at them, but it's very nice to have her doing it.
I would like also to, for the times when I'm not speaking just for myself.
Yeah.
But I think it's good for the minutes to reflect that if board members are not able to vote because they're not physically present, but they are zoomed in, that should
Yeah.
also be reflected in
Yeah.
the minutes.
Okay,
Yeah, I think you could maybe say that in the roll, you
or in
could,
the
like,
role,
Yes,
Grace,
in the role.
via Zoom or
Exactly,
something like that,
yeah.
and that kind of.
I think that,
Yeah,
I think that the public deserves to know that people weren't just
not there,
flaky.
Not voting.
not, voting,
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
Or even that you're discussing it in a future meeting with like the previous knowledge, right? It shows
Right.
that you have been involved.
Mhm.
That's important.
Yeah, so
Okay,
you could
good.
add that
Yep.
in, that would be great.
Absolutely.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the August 21st regular board meeting minutes
With that.
with that correction?
I would make that motion.
I second.
All in favor?
I had one question though.
Okay.
We had a closed session before this meeting and I was wondering, and I went back and looked at previous meetings also. It seems like we have minutes for closed sessions when they're their own standalone meetings. For example, if we meet with our council for a specific issue, but do we need to have minutes for this meeting where it's a closed session before an open session? And I'm not sure about the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that too, so I'll look into it and see, and maybe, I mean, we can also decide whether or not. I don't know if there's a legal reason why you wouldn't, and if you want us to include that, we can do that too.
I thought there weren't minutes in closed session unless you took action. And then you have to announce it in public.
Well, there's an agenda for it, then you
Yeah.
go, you take public comment, you go into closed session, and then you come out and report any action that was taken.
Or-
So
or
there's
if
there's
any
kind
action
of
was
a
taken.
paper trail.
Maybe
Yeah.
adding that into these minutes, you know, like if you take
Mm-hmm.
an action after the closed session, you're adding that piece into the minutes so that you're. You know, providing information to the public as to what that action was.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's how the
Just,
school does
it's
it.
more of a report, it's not minutes.
Right,
well,
right.
if you look at our minutes page on our website, the BCPUD website, there are a bunch of special meetings that had closed sessions where we have minutes
Mhm.
posted. So these are, I mean, obviously, there's not a lot of meat in these minutes, but they are there. I think it's good to have them there.
I'm sure
for-
we need them legally too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but as far as this, from what I remember of this meeting in August, it was, we met for 30 or 60 minutes before the open session, so it was, I don't know if it's considered two separate meetings or got
Yeah.
one long meeting with a closed session.
Yeah,
Like I know the school board typically has closed session as part of their meeting, like pretty much every month, so, anyway.
no, I think it's definitely, that's a good point that we need to make sure we're. You know, publishing whatever's come out of that, any action that's come out of that
Yeah,
closed session,
or even just that no action was,
or no action.
I mean, I think even
Yeah,
just publishing
yeah,
that is important too,
Yeah.
just to be comprehensive. about it.
Okay, yep,
So, I don't know if you want to approve the minutes, you know, with the stipulation that this is looked into, or do you want to just table it for next month, or what do you think we should do about that?
it's up to you guys, I mean, I can look into it since we did have the, you know, why don't we just not approve them now, and then I'll see what we do, and then we can do it next time.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Sorry.
Thank
And then,
you.
yeah,
No,
no,
that's
September
That's a
ones,
good, really good point. And we don't have the September 16th ones yet, because
No.
Annie's still working on it.
Yeah,
You're- Okay, great, thank you, Beth.
Yeah.
Approval of the warrants, item 25, September 14th to October 11th warrants.
I have one question.
Mhm.
All right. There's an item from Moral Land Care
yeah,
for mowing the youth forest for the fire fuel reduction.
yeah.
I thought that was a grant-based thing.
Well, so, basically, we kind of thought it was a grant-based thing too, it was mostly, and George kind of coordinated the whole thing. But, because it's our land, we, ended up paying for it, however, I talked to George and I was like, I thought that was paid for by the grant, so the fire department offered to pay, or they actually paid half of it. So we got half of the payment back from them. To cover it, but in the future, what I told him is I said, we'll just make sure that we're clarifying who's paying for what work to be done, because we were kind of under the same impression, oh, great, that sounds great, it looks
Yeah.
great. And it's all good, but I think their assumption was it's sort of our land and we're the ones who are, you know, everybody's benefiting from it, but, you know, we're clearing our own land. But they did pay half of it,
okay.
It does look really good.
yeah. We're
Any
getting
other-
signs.
Any other questions about the warrants?
I had a question about the big charge from Co-Sanitary about the sludge removal from the
Mhm.
clarifier. Is that a sort of annual thing that we do, or is that some problem that?
No, it's an annual thing that we do, and I'm not sure if we did it I think we did last year too, also, yeah, so it's just the byproducts that end up in the clarifier, and we have to get them sucked out,
Yeah.
basically. So it's unfortunately just something we need to budget for,
Yeah, it's a lot of sludge.
yeah.
And then that computer IT work of
Uh-huh,
it's one of the bigger items and not as big as some of the few items you guys were gonna call out, but I'm assuming that is part of what Georgia had anticipated was gonna be increased costs. for
Yeah.
IT.
yeah, so he's coming in and, you know, helping us with our systems and I think there was some equipment in there as well too, so I can double check it too.
And does that seem to be?
Yeah,
working out?
yeah, he's supposed to come next week and help us, so we're still moving and trying to get more technologically savvy.
Good.
That's great.
All right. Shall we vote on approving the warrants, please?
I move to approve the warrants.
Second,
Second,
All in favor?
Hi.
Right,
Thank you.
you got your signatures, I believe.
Yes,
Future agenda
yes.
items have been discussed, unless there's anything else. that we
This is a
could-
milestone. We usually start our meetings in 3 minutes.
I know. I know, we're gonna call Jack and Deloach. The next meeting date, set the next meeting date, which is gonna be November.
Hold on one second, let me look at my calendar. November 20th.
Okay.
So that's right before Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Week before Thanksgiving.
Thanks, guys. You're-
Good night, Jenny.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it works for me.
I'll be here. All right,
Okay.
any other business? If not, this meeting is adjourned.
All right. Thank you very much.
Separating us along, right?
I know I did such a good